Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom. What I want to do is I want to take a walk out here and I want to show you how to use this PDF4, which stands for Pathfinder Deadfall 4. It is a reusable aircraft aluminum figure 4 trigger that you can use multiple ways to set traps. And it's exactly like a normal figure 4 as far as things sitting in notches go, right? You have a bait stick here on the front that has some places you can attach bait to it. It has a notch in the back of the stick for the fulcrum point, basically, or the lever to attach into, just like this. And then it has a place to set your deadfall here on top. And as long as you have weight here, it's pushing this fulcrum up into the notch of this lever. And when this lever is moved at all, it releases that fulcrum. So what happens is you have weight pushing down like this, like I'm pushing down on it now with my thumb. And as soon as this moves, it gives way. And that releases the trap. Now, again, this thing is aircraft aluminum, folds down very, very small. All right. We're going to have a special on a trap pack of these, which is like a 6-pack. And I'll put that down in the description box of this video. But what I want to do is I have found lots and lots of ways to use this trigger. And this trigger was invented by the same gentleman who created or invented the poncho poles that we also sell on our website. And we have an arrangement with him to produce these in mass quantity as well as the poncho poles. And I wanted to show you some different methods that I use to use this trigger, because we're going to talk about fishing, we're going to talk about snaring, we're going to talk about deadfalls, and we're going to talk about live cages. I'm going to show you 4 ways to use this trigger for 4 different traps. So you really have a very versatile trigger system, and that's really what trapping is all about. Understanding a few trigger systems and then creating traps off of those triggers. The triggers are the tricky part. The traps are easy. Once we have a trigger that's multifunctional, that we can use multiple ways on multiple sets for multiple animals and multiple applications, both on water and land, then we have something we can carry that's ultra lightweight. 6 of these doesn't weigh very much because they are aircraft aluminum, and you don't have to carve anything. It's a matter of breaking sticks and pounding sticks in the ground and things like that at that point without carving any complicated notches that have to have particular fit up to work properly. This thing has it all already done for you. Let's go out and set a few traps. Okay, close look real quick at this figure 4 trap. You can see that there is a notch in the back that sits into a small lever here. It's also notched at the top right here in the upper lever so that you can use this thing for a suspended trigger system that we'll talk about in a minute. It also has the same thing at the bottom. It has a notch so that you can multifunctionally use it as a suspended trigger. On the front, on the bait stick end or the lever, you have a point with a couple different options here to attach bait to, or food bait of some kind, some type of carrion, whatever you decide to use for bait. And that gives you a lot of multi-functionality in this trap to set it in different configurations that we're going to talk about today. All right, so there's the trap folded up as you would carry it. And you can carry 6 of these in a small pouch pretty easy. They stand up straight in the Pathfinder haversack. They're about 12.5, 13 inches long-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood without measuring them, putting them up against my foot, and knowing that they will stand up in the Pathfinder haversack. So you could put 6 of these in one side of your Pathfinder haversack standing straight up and have 6 traps ready to go. You're just walking around the woods and figuring out where you want to put them. All right, so this is a pretty good location for a trap because we have a game trail coming up from the bottom in a ravine, and we have a large stone right here at the top of the hill, kind of in some brambles with some trees around it. That's a perfect place to put a deadfall trap just off the trail, or animals are going to come up, be attracted to the bait, and get into your deadfall. Remember that a deadfall usually needs to be about 5 times heavier than the quarry that you're trying to trap in the trap. And deadfalls aren't made to just squash the guts out of the animal and mess the meat all up. What they're really made to do is suffocate the animal so that it falls on the animal, and every time he breathes out, he can't breathe in as heavy the next time, and within just a very few seconds, he will suffocate. If you smash the animal completely, you're going to have guts and everything else in the meat, which you don't want if you want to enjoy your food at all right? So all we have to do with this is swing this trap out, hold it with our hands, find our deadfall, which we've got one here. It's probably about a 30, 35 pound flat rock. So definitely good enough for a squirrel, possum, something like that. Easy enough. Let's get this bad boy set. All right, so again, pretty simple. All we have to do is lift this rock up. Again, it's a pretty heavy rock, okay? We can just grab the back of this trap and hold it. Or we put it in the ground just like this. Get ourselves a good angle on the stone so that it's not moving around on us. And we're set. It's that simple to set this trap, right? As far as setting it off, boom. Trigger's thrown completely clear of the trap every time because it's made to do that, just like a figure 4. As this thing releases here, what it does is it swings this up and pushes back. So it pushes the trap clear. So again, lock it into the back side just like that with your fingers. Get your deadfall up in the air. Get your trap situated underneath your deadfall where you want it. If you're on soft ground, you may have to put some kind of a plate underneath the trap. But if you find solid ground, you won't have to worry about that at all. And again, trigger is thrown clear of the trap every time, okay? Okay, so here we have a live cage. Very simple to build. Again, no notches, just a couple strings, built up log cabin style. All we have to do is take that figure 4 trigger and set it underneath just like this. It's very, very simple. Bait the end with whatever bait you choose. And as soon as the animal touches that, he's going to be in the trap. But again, trigger thrown completely clear. Animal's in the trap. And I've caught plenty of birds with traps like this. All you'd have to do is bait the end of this thing with something sticky, like an energy bar or something like that. It had nuts or fruits and berries in it. And you're going to have animals after this thing, no doubt about it. Again, it's very, very simple. Just plug that back notch in and hold it. Lift up the cage. Set it on top. And you're ready. Okay, so we're using this PDF4 deadfall trap now as a fishing trigger. We've got this hooked to a spring pole, and I'll show you that in a minute. And it's suspended from a stake here at the bottom on this notch. And this is the key to this thing is all the notches are already carved for you, basically in the metal. This is just a toggle sitting in a notch, okay? You have a tip here, and all I've done is I've taken a piece of string and put a loop on it that'll fit over that tip. And then this is your line to the water so that when the fish takes the bait, it springs and catches the fish, leaving the trigger right here on the bank, and your fish is attached to the pole out into the water. All right, so the first thing we need for a spring pole type trap is a springy pole. And here I've just got a piece of bamboo. This could be any stick on the bank if you're fishing, or in the woods if you're not. And you can strap that stick to a stake in the ground if you have to move it or manipulate it to the place you want it. In this case, I've just got a sleeve that I use, which is just a piece of metal tubing. And I can carry those and then set these traps wherever I want to on the bank for fishing. Now, attaching this line to the fishing pole itself, I use what I call a lark's head jam. And it's a very simple knot. And I use it a lot for this kind of stuff because it works well. So all we've done here, let me get this dude off of here real quick for you. Loosen it up and get it off. That's the other advantage to this, is it can be taken off pretty easily if you need to. So all I've done here is I've taken and put a double overhand stop knot at the end of my line. Then I just take that and I turn it into a lark's head knot, which means it's got 2 loops like ears there. And I slide those over the top. And when I pull that down, what happens is that knot that's sticking up here on this tail, when you tighten this thing down, it will jam and not come undone, okay? And just kind of move it around until it jams in there, just like that, to where it's stuck. Now you can get it off if you need to and move it or whatever. You can shorten it if you need to just by moving that stop knot, whatever you need to do, but that line stays very tight like that, and it's not going to come off because it's in a jam, all right? We're going to use that same knot at the bottom as well for our device to hold our figure 4 trap. I've just put a loop in the line and I've adjusted that. I've pulled it down to where I need it. I've put an overhand loop in the line, and again, a simple lark's head knot right here is holding just a bamboo toggle. So I've just put a lark's head in there, put the bamboo toggle through it, cinched it around the middle on an inline loop there that was just an overhand knot. And then I have one more loop right here that I tied after the fact that's going to go over the front of my PDF4 trap to activate the trigger. This releases the line from the trap trigger itself. This sets off the trigger, and this rest of this line is what goes out to the water. So you've got your hook, your sinkers, whatever, throw them out in the water, and then get this thing set. Now I've just taken a bamboo stake and driven it in at an angle, and I have used that same lark's head jam to hold that on there with just a loop on there. And that loop's gonna hold our trap trigger in place in the notch already created. So again, there's not a bunch of carving here. I'm breaking sticks basically to make toggles, breaking sticks to make stakes. I sawed these off, but it could just be a broken stick jammed in there, and this lark's head knot tied around there with a loop on it to hold things in place, okay? Now what we have to do is we have our figure 4 trigger here. And the way this figure 4 trigger works is, obviously, it's held by friction. So this swing arm is held in place here, and basically any weight on top of here would hold that in place until this was moved, and then it sets the trigger off, okay? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take advantage of the fact that anything pulling up at this joint, which is why this notch is cut in here, anything pulling up at this joint is going to force this into this notch, just like this, okay? Until again, the trigger is displaced and it moves, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're going to come down on our line here, and we're gonna take that toggle, and we're going to lay that toggle right inside this trap trigger, right where that notch is, just like that. And then we're going to come around and we're going to place this in here just like this. And now it's trapped in that notch, but it will release from that notch as soon as the trap gets set off. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to hold this in place and come down and hook this loop into this bottom notch, just like this. And now we have a suspended trigger basically. And this is our line, again, going out to the water. And we have a very simple loop on here that will hook to the front of this. Now, the one thing that's important with this is that our line here that's coming off of our toggle is coming out the same side of the trap as the toggle is going to release, because you don't want it pulling line through the trap. So you need all this on the other side of the trap because the toggle is going to release back out this direction. So all of this line has to be on the same side. Then once you take this small loop and you hook it to this front end, just like this, that's your line out to the water. And as soon as tension's pulled on that line, it's going to release the trap. The trigger is going to sit right here. Your fish is going to be attached to the pole and be there when you get back. Okay, so what we've done now is we set this trap up very similar to the way we had it set up for fishing, except the trigger will be activated by bait on the end of the trigger, some type of food bait or carrion bait. And we've left one opening into this cubby, which is through the snare, to reach in to grab the bait. The snare is attached to the spring line now, whereas we had a line going out to the water before. We now have a snare connected to the spring line right above the toggle. So once the trigger is set, the toggle will release and yank the snare up to tighten it around the animal, okay? Now we could put something in here to almost pin that animal in if we wanted to. We could put a couple of sticks across the top of this cubby to pin that animal up against if we wanted to. Zon's coming over here to investigate. Hopefully he's not gonna get in there. All right, so there you go. Now your animal's in the snare. Again, trigger's still sitting there, ready to be reused. You got your animal snared. If you alarm this thing somehow so you know he's caught, a can of rocks or something like that on top of the spring pole, that'd help, because an animal's gonna try to free himself, which is why I used a wire snare attached to bank line. All right, guys, so one last thing we're gonna do with this big video I did on these PDF4 traps. We're gonna put a special up from now through Sunday this weekend. They come in two different ways. You can buy them in a 5-pack, which comes in this heavy bag, and the bag actually has an instruction panel in it that shows you how to set the traps, okay? And it's a heavy duty bag. You could probably put a dozen of them in here if you wanted to, but 5 come in this bag. We're gonna sell that for $34.99 for the 5-pack. And that is down from, I think the normal price is about $51 on these things. Then we're also gonna sell them individually at $7.99. I think the current price on those things is almost $12 for a single. So we're gonna put them on a really good sale this weekend to back up this video that we did on these trap triggers. And I would encourage you to go visit our website and grab them. You know, it's easy to say things like, well, I hope you'd have something like that in a survival situation. Just happen to have a few of those sitting around. Survival situations don't always happen in the middle of the woods when you have nothing, all right? Keeping some of these things in some type of a bug out bag, in a car, in some type of emergency kit. You never know when you may be separated from food. You never know when you might not be able to drive to get something. You never know when emergencies are going to happen. You never know when you're going to get stranded for 3 or 4 days in a vehicle somewhere that you break down, and possibly it's going to take somebody some time to get to you, or they're not sure exactly where you're at, and you may have to do something. Adding something like this to your food procurement kit that you keep, whether that includes things like frog gigs and trot lines and maybe even a .22 rifle, things like that you keep in a kit. These are just an addition to that kit that helps you do things fairly lightweight, doesn't add a lot of weight to something you may have to carry, and gives you the ease of being able to set multiple types of traps with a single trigger. So I would encourage you to take advantage of this sale while you can. Again, it's going to be today through Sunday, $34.99 for the 5-pack and $7.99 for individual triggers. Okay, guys, I appreciate you joining me here today for just a couple quick tip and tricks with the PDF4 Pathfinder Deadfall 4 trigger. Again, this thing's designed for survival use, but there are plenty of applications you can use it legally year-round in some states. Some states allow deadfall trapping. The state of Ohio allows trapping with spring-activated devices for fishing. So you could use this as a fishing type trap year-round in Ohio as long as you tagged it as a trap like a normal trapper would have to do, and you, of course, have to have a fishing license. Guys, I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I appreciate everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.